This is sick. We'll start nice and long, and then I'll clean it up after. All right, I'm here with Sacha, and he is looking to get his hair shaved. So ahead of our podcast, we thought, what not better way to start the podcast than shaving his head. Sacha, on your end, what has caused this? Why are we shaving your head today?
Say overall, I'm trying
This is
to leave an external motivation, external value source in my life and move to purely internal. And previously, I've been pretty obsessive over my hair in my younger years and attaching a lot of my self-worth to my hair with how other people perceive me. So leaving that, shaving the hair, no greater step than that.
Damn.
And it seems like a powerful change and one I'm committed to make.
Let's go. This is sick. We'll start nice and long, and then I'll clean it up after. Wow. Have you cut your hair this short ever?
No, shortest.
No. Wow, dude. Too long ago. Is that true?
Pretty recent, yeah.
This thing just died.
All right, that's it. What's
Dude.
left?
Good about, yeah. Welcome back to the Boy to Man podcast, where we help you go from boy to man in mind, body, heart, and soul. Today, I got a special guest, one of my own, inside of Above Man, Sacha Deschenes. And we're going to sit down and just kind of really have a conversation. Of course, talk about, what he's been taking away inside of Above Men. But really just a conversation. And prior to sitting down, not only did we just finish some Primal Bowls, but we also just shaved Sacha's hair, which you would have saw at the start of this episode. And lastly, first thing we did was we went for a nice hike. And it's been our second hike here in Vancouver, which has been awesome. And so we're going to wrap it up with a good podcast to conclude the day. And it's Sacha's first podcast, too.
Indeed, yeah.
So, first of all, welcome to Boy to Man, and thank you for jumping on and chatting.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, why don't we jump into things? And I'm just curious, like, this second day, like, has anything been standout in terms of what we've been chatting about today at all? Or
That's a good question. I'd say hearing your story is especially intriguing to me. You have a lot of values that I look to incorporate into my life, and hearing how you got to where you are is, I mean, it's nice to have my curiosity satisfied, but also kind of make some connections in terms of like where I can fulfill myself to reach, let's say, where you are right now.
Interesting. What values were coming to mind for you? Or was anything specific?
Anything specific? I might need a second to think about that. I would say acting with care and understanding. That especially. In steering some of your business endeavors in like a new company, for example, and being understanding of the situation there. That was a value that, I mean, there's plenty of values that I get throughout the course, but I'm talking more specifically about your story, and that was insightful for sure. And it seems like you really carry that with you now. So that was one key takeaway for me if I were to apply that to my life going forward. In terms of nothing else that really comes to mind for the story specifically.
Gotcha. Cool. Speaking of stories, give us a super high level just so that people know, what Sacha's about, kind of your bullet points on a resume.
What I'm about.
It's always a good test too.
It is a good test. Super high level, keeping it concise is difficult, but I would say I'm mostly just about growth and learning. Pretty much everything I do. That's always the key consistent point. I currently operate a business and student works,
Mm-hmm.
so most of my schedule is pretty much just filled with student works activities.
Mm-hmm.
It's my second season, so a vet in that.
Mm-hmm.
And then also what fills the rest of my calendar is pretty much just above men activities, being energy conscious.
Let's go.
Spirituality is a large part of my life, so I'd say I'm about business, student works, spirituality, and energy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Sacha's obviously, underplaying his success inside of Student Works in a role, which also I appreciate. But Sacha was the Rookie of the Year last year.
Not Rookie of the Year. I beat the rookie record.
You beat the rookie record.
Yeah.
Okay, so beat the rookie record for production, which you clocked in just shy of 500,000.
430 or so.
430, which is phenomenal. So as at the time 19 years old, right?
19, yeah.
Yeah, 19-year-old running a business. First time you ever running a business as well.
Yeah.
Right. And managed to beat the rookie record. Even aside records aside, the fact that you went from never running a business to running a $400,000 operation and now on track to doing the same thing, if not larger, is quite the feat. And so don't want to underplay that, especially if we're speaking about the personal brand side. And we want to get on the podcast. We were talking earlier, and Sacha, he's never been on a podcast, but then at the same time, you were talking about envisioning yourself being on the podcast and like, what were those things, right? And so sometimes you got to, put the bullet points out to make people listen, and I think Sacha is totally someone you want to listen to in the sense of what he's doing, not only in his life, but also I think a lot of the ideas that you're I guess that comes back down to what you're doing in your life. I've even taken inspiration in a lot of ways. And some of those have been the Focus 20. That's been something that, the first time we did a hike, because it's like, oh, this is interesting. And I'm totally on board with it. And it's something I do in a different way, every 60 minutes. But I love every 20 minutes, timer goes off, and it's just being present, and then, like a movement, right? Mm-hmm. Which I love. And then the other one that I got from today, actually, was, now it's just slipping me.
The time?
Yes, the time. That was huge. So not having, actually, I'll have you explain it, but explain kind of the idea of the time and why you're doing that with the alarms and what that looks like.
Gotcha. So I find throughout my day, I get a lot more enjoyment and efficiency from being in the flow state as much as possible. So one of the best ways to get out of the flow state, I find, is worrying about what's coming up in your schedule, accidentally checking the time, and then it immediately provokes you to think like, oh, I have only 15 minutes left in this task. I'm maybe going to give 50% of myself. Whereas if you didn't check that time, you're probably going to keep on that maximal effort, ideally. And you're likely going to leave flow state if you do look at that time. So pretty much every night I schedule my day down to a T. But the key part of that is setting adjacent alarms in my schedule as well. So pretty much I can just do my day in a flow mode, not having to really worry about much time-wise. And yeah, I would say that pretty much summarizes it.
So there's a calendar, and then once you've mapped the calendar, you're then taking an alarm and setting them for the start and consequential end of each task throughout the day.
Exactly, yeah. So I start with the non-negotiables, and then I'll follow with the negotiable activities, and then add a negotiable preface to that in the alarm. So I know if this goes off, hey, okay, I can still work around this. I can still do it a bit longer. But if the non-negotiable goes off, I know, like, okay, time to switch. Let's go.
Yeah, I love that. And then one detail that made me go one step further on that is you have a little blue piece of tape on your phone. Why do you have that?
I have it right above where the time is in the top left. So I don't want to accidentally see the time. If I want to see the time, I want it to be a conscious decision. So that's unlocking your phone and looking at the large portion in the home screen. But similar to that, I also do, like in my kitchen, all the oven alarms, or sorry, the oven times
Yeah.
are also mapped off. If I want to see that, I just take off the sticky note, put it back, but I don't want to accidentally see the time.
And that goes back to when you see the time, then it like starts to trigger you out of flow state.
Yeah, I'm out of the moment. I'm thinking about other things outside of my immediate reality, which is good if you plan to do it, but I didn't plan to do it in that moment.
Yeah, I love that, and it's totally something that I'm gonna consider implementing. I got to enroll Jordan. I'm putting the numbers on it, right? But I think that's so powerful, man, because when you first brought that up, I was saying that's totally been a reason why I've exited flow state multiple times and diminished my quality of work for the last potentially 15, sometimes even 30 minutes. Sometimes if I like really want to work on something, I'll see that I only have an hour left, and even that hour will bother me now. Like I'll still get back into it, but for that 5, 10, 15 minutes potentially where I saw, oh, I only have an hour left and I really wanted to work on this for maybe another like 3 hours or something. Maybe even if I'm not going to work on it for 3 hours, but just knowing I only have an hour left, all of a sudden diminishes the work. So I love that so much. And at first glance, for some of you, it might sound hardcore. I think it is in a lot of ways.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a total commitment, but
As
what
it
better
should be
way
embraced.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But the question is like not, oh, that's hardcore, I'm not going to do that, or not going to do that, or that's over the top. But do you want to operate on that level? Right? And I think people sometimes balk initially when there's like a dramatic or hardcore method in someone's life. And then the subsequent question, comes up down the road. It's like, well, how is he doing what he's doing? It's like, well, back to what he just talked about.
Yeah.
Like, and so one comes with the other. If you want these results, it comes with these actions. And these actions that you're not doing as well, the bucket of things that you're not doing, like looking at the time.
Yeah.
Right. So, so that's good. So going back to us first meeting, what brought you into the world? What intrigued you or what triggered even in your own life or what you were seeing that I was doing, that made you even want to consider jumping into Above Men?
I would say I'd have to talk about the first time that we met, which was in boat cruise.
Okay.
And you were kind of this like enigma, just kind of standing around next to Amber, who was someone that I knew beforehand from the podcast, not personally, but I've watched a lot of the weekly pod. And I knew like, oh, this guy's talking to Amber. Not only is he talking to Amber, but like he's following him around. Like obviously Amber values him enough to keep him in his circle. And then when I approached Amber initially, you were by his side, and just talking with you, I could definitely feel the presence. And it was like just a raw, pure presence that kind of stuck with me even after. I was like, this guy is different. I realize it's from being so in touch with your energy, but at the time I was just so curious. And then I think I found out who you were, and then one of my friends, Diego, joined Above Men initially, and after finding out who you were, I definitely had in my mind to join, and then Diego kind of ignited that flame fully. And once I heard Diego was in, I was all in as well. But I was honestly pre-sold from the very beginning, just by if this guy's offering something and how unique his initial presence was. He's clearly doing something differently from everyone else.
Thank you. Appreciate
Absolutely,
that.
yeah.
And now, obviously, being in the program and being an Above Man and just, hanging out with me, like, what has been some of those takeaways for you that you've since been implementing in your life? Just take that as however you want, whether it be one, many, whatever.
Oof. So many things. In terms of stuff that I directly implement, I'd say number one, I have to say my diet. It's such a simple fix. It's hard, but it's so simple, and it absolutely bleeds through into everything in the best way possible.
When it's locked in.
When it's locked in, yeah. And like I said, it's so simple. Just following, like, it's only 3 meals. Uh, it doesn't get much more simple than that. But just following it, like procrastination pretty much went away. Before, the resistance to eliminate my procrastination, I could still do it, but I was drawing on willpower. Whereas now I just don't even want to do other things than what I initially planned to do.
And you're linking that back to nutrition.
Back to nutrition. Yeah, absolutely. Because I've had times where I've been dialed in with all my other habits, but nutrition wasn't there, and still had that resistance. But once nutrition gets back in, it seems simple, seems easy.
Wow. Yeah, it's crazy, man. How it's I'm glad you brought that up first, because it's easily the number one thing that I've seen have an radically positive impact on anyone that's come into Above Men. When they get their diet fixed and they actually commit to it to the level that you are, like, magic happens across every area of your life. And it's interesting because if you think about it, the flip, it's like, well, no shit, because nutrition is such a fundamental part of our life, but I don't think we put as much weight on it, or the world as a whole right now, especially the Western world. We don't place as much weight on what nutrition, how much of an impact nutrition has in everything. And so the relationship with nutrition, I think, is very blurry for a lot of people. And there's a lot of mucky waters around like using it for stress, right? Using it as a source of pleasure, using it as a source of distraction. And I think when you dial it in, not only does your energy go up, your focus goes up, but it's crazy to hear that you even feel like your procrastination has evaporated or dissolved from dialing in your nutrition as well.
Yeah, and that's probably the main thing I'd suggest to people if they're looking to embark on a health journey, is just start with that, because you can see the immediate results so quickly, as long as you just do it full commitment. Bingo.
Even if you do 80-20, I'll even caveat that and say, like, but that being said, maybe that's your commitment, right? Maybe your commitment is 80-20. So as long as it's a full commitment where it's like you've set a plan and you stuck to that plan. And if that plan is 80-20, 80% of the time I'm going to eat this way, 20% of the time I'm going to be open, right? Obviously in Above Men, we talk about the 90-10 rule, right? And so depending on what that is, just have that plan and stick to it. Like, be in full commitment to that. Because when you're in full commitment, it's not 90, 99-1, it's 100. That door's fully closed. There's a lot of magic that happens. There's a lot of like mental load that just kind of gets taken off of your shoulders in a lot of ways, from the decisions that you're making. What am I going to eat? When am I going to eat it? But then obviously the benefits of the energy, procrastination, things of that nature, right? But I agree, full commitment.
Absolutely. And another thing I'd like to throw in there is actually something that's a part of the course as an introductory activity to raise awareness, but it's the 7-day time and energy audits.
Yeah.
Because I've been doing those pretty much nonstop since I started. And it's on the basis of just reflection, like similar benefits to journaling, but thinking with respect to your energy throughout the day. It really lets you see what you're doing that drains you, and where there's the biggest room for improvement. And I mean, and for my goals, like, there isn't any need to stop improving. Like, there isn't a finish line. It's just the journey itself. So incorporating that every day has had a huge effect as well.
Bingo. Yeah, it's a great one. So for 7 days, basically what you do is, from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed, set an alarm for 1 hour. And then every time the hour goes off, stop, pull up a notepad, and ask, what did I do for the last hour? And what were my energy levels? And then also, one of the things that I also get the guys to do is pull up your phone and look at your screen time and your pickups. Some of you, you're going to use your phone for work. That's great. But a lot of you don't need your phone 90% of the time. And so being cognizantly, being aware of that throughout the day, of like, how much am I using my phone? It brings your awareness back to it. Because one thing that I've realized, phone usage is probably one of the things across a modern human's life that flies under the radar the most. like how much someone actually picks up their phone and uses it. I think it's something that people are just like not aware of at all. Like we went when we did the retreat. Once everyone got there, I like got everyone, and I'm like, guys, I'm gonna ask that you just don't go on your phones all day on the Saturday. And by the end of the day, there was like multiple guys back on their phones. And I'll take the onus on me that I should have just grabbed everyone's phone and put it in the bucket. But I didn't, I was kind of like haphazard. I don't know if people, are going to need it later or whatever. Next time, I'm totally just going to take everyone's phone and put it in a bucket. And some of the guys actually in the feedback, they're like, I actually wish you just like would have taken my phone. But it was like some of the guys knew that was the intention. And then by default, they have their phone back out. And I called a lot of the guys out anytime they'd have their phone. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? You're just not supposed to have your phone out. He's like, and I didn't even know I was on my phone, a lot of the time. So I think it's a great practice to do that, to get aware of just like even your phone time. Mm-hmm. Just like how much phone time are you actually spending throughout the day, right? Because it's interesting. It's one thing to use it at the end of the day when, things are wrapping up and say you have some open time. It's another thing to like look back at your day and see an hour of screen time and you weren't even supposed to be on your phone. It's like, what was going on there? So 7-day nutrition, 7-day time and energy audit. I know you've taken that to the nth degree. What else comes up for you?
I would say I'd also have to mention just our personal calls as well. When I first started Above Men, I was in a busier period with school and then starting Student Works. Mm-hmm. And I didn't go through much course material. I'm still picking up my load in that sense. But one thing I did consistently do is reach out whenever I felt that I had an area in my life where I could drastically improve from a discussion. And the time you took into giving me your full focus. And I love the way you listen as well. Like you don't immediately try to interject, which I value a lot. And within those calls, like basically it was a takeaways from the 30-minute call or so. And then I would schedule a couple of reflection blocks from there based on the feedback you provided. And then just gradually I felt that's probably had one of the biggest underlying changes for me is, for example, we worked on like my motivation. It was mainly external before with Student Works. Like honestly, with the leaderboards, like the company puts everyone on a leaderboard pretty much. If it wasn't for that, I'd probably run a fifth of my business. And that's mainly just thinking, okay, what are the other operators going to think about me?
Yep.
And I wanted them to think, hey, like this guy's great. So that pushed me to my extremes, or at the time I thought was my extremes. But at the end of the season, there's no more scoreboard. So I found it very difficult to stay motivated. So then we had our calls, and basically through that, it was definitely a more complicated process mentally, but I was able to merge myself into a more internal motivation source. And it was a lot of looking at, okay, why is it external? Like, why do you care what these people think about you? Why do you value their judgment so much? And working through that in your calls was huge for me.
Yeah, we've been kind of talking about that today, where it was like you're saying having the external pressure is uncomfortable in certain lights, and that's what pushes you.
It is, yeah. Like I'm stressed out thinking about what people are thinking about me. Yeah, like it makes me act, but I'm acting from a place nowhere near flow. Like paranoid, kind of frantic.
And and then the other part that you're mentioning is that's what drove you, right? And so you knew that, okay, if I just submit myself back to external motivation, like put myself in an environment that I have external pressure, then I'm going to be able to thrive in the sense of like the metrics in a business. And then we were talking about this idea, well, it's like, if you really want to, if you're truly saying you want to be put in the most uncomfortable situation that's going to force growth. It would be actually remove all of the external pressure and try to still do the same thing. Because like you just said, I'd probably run a fifth of my business if the leaderboards weren't there. It's like, well, that actually sounds like a bigger challenge than if the leaderboards were there, you know? And I think that's an interesting thing. We were talking about this at the retreat, where there's a bunch of high achievers for their age, right? There was a bunch of student works guys there as well. And everyone, for the most part, had gotten to where they are at this part of their life through raw talent of like just doing what feels best for them, and that's gotten them a pretty far distance, right? And some of that is going to be like hard work, quote unquote, but that was like the easy work for them. You get what I'm saying?
The path of less resistance
for them specifically, right? Like they're still doing hard stuff relative to everyone else, but like that was just part of their natural talent. It's like they could just get there because like that's just who they are. So then I was asking and questioning one of the guys. I'm just like, okay, if this path on how you got here was just from like raw talent, and this thing over here is actually the uncomfortable thing that is also going to grow you and grow the business, like that's actually the thing that's going to make you grow the most, even though that everyone on the outside is praising you for going down this path. But it's like, dude, this is your raw talent. Like that was just what you were given with, you know? You don't actually need a whole lot of effort to get there, but it's the things that we almost don't face early on when we're developing ourselves. Those are the things that are going to make the biggest leaps and bounds, even though if we look at this area of our life is like, oh, look at me, I'm succeeding so much in this for a young age. But it's like that's going to run dry at some point, and then you're going to feel like it's way harder because it was so easy to begin with. So your expectations are, hey, it's going to be so easy, but then when it runs dry, it's like, well, the expectation was not the expectation, but you were operating under a false premise from the beginning because you're actually just leaning into raw talent to begin with. You know what I'm saying there?
Absolutely. And
yeah,
hard to have consistency if you operate that way.
Totally. Because you're just going off the bounds of like that raw drive of just like, here's what I got and I can just get by off of that. You know, you see a lot of that in the as 20 somethings of they don't really feel they need to do any kind of structure because you can just get by with, you either have a fuck ton of time or, you know, your body is in such good shape that you can just like brace the impact on a lot of stuff, right? But the harder thing would actually be constrain yourself and put yourself into a structure. That'd be the harder thing to do, right? Which is interesting.
Yeah, I'm thinking back to my business. Like I absolutely just put my body through the ringer in that season. Like I was probably sleeping on average 4 hours a week.
It's crazy, dude. Like kudos to be able to operate like that and operate at such a high level with such little sleep.
But yeah, it did not. There are some days where I just wasn't there in the head.
Yeah, how are you showing up emotionally during that season?
I think I had the benefit of being able to focus on purely one thing. I didn't really have any other areas of my life that needed my effort. So with that in mind, with the pure clarity and focus on a singular goal of beating the record, I would say all my emotions were attached to that singular goal. And basically the moment that I started realizing I could hit that goal, my emotions were actually pretty okay. They're pretty good overall. So emotionally, I was showing up honestly pretty satisfactory.
Interesting.
But if you added other areas in demand to my life, say a girlfriend at that time, or difficult family issues, or pretty much anything else, I would have probably deteriorated.
How do you think you're showing up differently this season?
It's tricky to say exactly because it's still in the early phases not early phases, but still in the preseason. So in the production is really where things ramp up. But immediately I could definitely say within my self-regulation, for example, I'm going to bed when I say I'm going to go to bed. And I just basically just rely on my scheduling, which I have immense trust in myself with, to whatever I was going to do that night, move it around, reprioritize things as needed. So I'm definitely showing up for myself health-wise in a way that will massively benefit me, say 5-10 years from now, or 20, 50, who knows. But that's a big change for me in this season. And I feel I'm growing a lot more rapidly as well. I was pretty much just acting, not questioning why I was doing what I was doing last season, and just trying to go off of raw drive and just get the results forced in any way possible. I'm not trying to force things as much at the start of this season and kind of take avenues as they come. And I feel that leads to a lot more consistency. And not just consistency, but I'm not going to say easy, but with respect to last season, easier consistency.
Kind of plays into the next question I want to ask you is like, what do you think you're doing that is allowing you to be in the position to succeed right now? Going and running this business, obviously you're aiming for another big year. Like, what do you think are the fundamental pillars of that are allowing you to show up for the potential to be successful?
I would say pursuit of discomfort is definitely big for me. That could be received or meant in a lot of different ways. For me, it's uncomfortable to follow my schedule every day. But I'm in such a habit with it that at the same time it's uncomfortable, but it's weird to say, but it's also fairly easy too. But
did it feel like that from the get-go, or was that something you had to work on?
Definitely something I had to work on, for sure. But once the habit's there, like it becomes unconscious, then it definitely changes things. But
when you fell off track, were you doing things to ensure you got back on track?
For which period?
Like anytime, say you fell off from your schedule and you recognize that you've fallen off track on your schedule. Was there certain things you were doing consciously to make yourself recommit to the integrity of your schedule?
I would say for me, a large thing in those kind of moments where I realize I'm off and I need to get back would be to just focus on my focus, which is basically I know at all times what I need to do. And sometimes there's just so much mumbo jumbo in your mind that it can put you off. So I would say taking time I'll actually just sit in my room when I know that I'm really off and I need to dial in and just stare at a candle for like 10 minutes. And even more powerful than meditation, because I find when I am off and I try to meditate, a lot harder to stay in control. But just staring at that one thing, just focusing in, getting in the moment, trying to enter a mini flow state within that time, and then just going from there to action. Because I find if I try to incorporate all the little strategies I know, but my energy's way off, then it gives so much opportunity to give myself excuses. But if I just focus on my mind on one thing and then move that one thing to one action, another action, another action, another action, just focus on that, that's my main way of getting back on track in those situations.
As you brought that up, I was trying to think about what I've heard that called. Do you know what it's called?
I'm not sure. I found it out doing it for myself.
Yeah, so looking at a candle, I want to say it's fixed point meditation. But it's actually a thing that people suggest doing in the meditation world is actually take a candle, like actually a candle, and stare at it. And it's really good for what you're saying of like self-awareness. It just draws up a lot of self-awareness, because what happens is your mind wants to go elsewhere, and you're just like, nope. Should I think about this? No. You know, should I look over here? No. You know, and I totally hear where you're coming from on this, and it's super powerful. I've never done it with a candle myself. Maybe it's worth getting a candle and starting that. But what I find when I do that same thing, not with a candle, but just even if, anyone could do this anytime, anywhere, and just pick a point like in your visuals and just hold your gaze at it. Typically, it helps when there's it's like a small little dot. I find, at least, like a defined thing. Is I find this like gap opens up of just like for conscious thinking, and as soon as you resist multiple impulses of like wanting to think about something else or wanting to like move your focus somewhere else, over time everything just starts to like simmer down and everything just kind of gets quieter, and then there's like this gap of attention that occurs that then like just this smooth flow of energy can just start to flow through, and your higher self almost just comes back in and takes back over. I find that's kind of what happens anytime I've done this fixed point that you're talking about. Do you find similar stuff, or?
Absolutely, yeah. I'd say it facilitates like doing your way out of your situation instead of my tendency is to think my way out of my situation. But the more I think about it, the more I'm probably just going to, like I said, give myself excuses. Because the majority of my thoughts at that time are going to be excuses.
Yeah.
So like turning off your mind, such a difficult thing to do. But if you can begin to do it, it just allows a whole new avenue of ways out of a rut.
Wow. Yeah. Which, again, leads back into thought follows action. Right?
Precisely.
I think it's something that I think is overlooked a lot of the time. I know I've tried to do what you're just saying, is like try to think myself out of it. But if you're thinking with on the same level that you got yourself in this rut on, so you're not going to do too well.
Yeah.
Because you're just using, in the book, Reality Transurfing, he talks about the mind a lot of the times can only build with past bricks. So if it's trying to build a home, it can only build a home of the bricks of your current reality. You can't bring anything new into the party with these bricks. So you're better off to actually do something that's going to force a new level of thinking, what you're kind of talking about. I like that. So anytime you've gone off track, you've leveraged action to put your mind in a different state, which in this case, fixed point, for, I don't even know if that's the right term, but we'll go with it, by staring at a candle, and then it kind of calms yourself. Then you fix on that one thing, and then that one thing turns into one action. And
exactly.
You kind of get back on track. So going back to your schedule, it's uncomfortable to follow your schedule. And on that, using stuff like this to stay in integrity with it. So obviously having a schedule is one thing. Would you say there's any other foundational pillars that you're leaning on for setting yourself up for success this season?
I'd say I'm following a consistent morning and nightly routine as well. Like I start with a run and a cold shower in the morning, and also playing into consistency with that. It allows me to take on the day's challenges a lot better. I felt like last season, although I was doing great business-wise, revenue-wise, health-wise, especially in, like, I would play soccer every month or so and realize, like, oh my God, I'm so out of fitness. This obviously isn't going to be great for me later on in life. So doing that run every morning kind of closes that loop in my mind and makes me feel fulfilled in that sense. Even though it's pretty minimal activity, it still closes that loop nevertheless. And a cold shower, I love it because it sucks. And it helps me realize the beauty in the pain of other events that may happen in a day, which is, I feel like you can never know that enough, never have that realization enough of pain is pain, sure, but there's so much else to it.
That's powerful. I totally hear what you're saying. 100%. Is that, well, my follow-up question on the routines is, why do you think that's such a fundamental aspect to setting yourself up to win? Is that it, or do you feel like there's other impacts that come with following a morning and night routine?
I would say it implements a guaranteed control in a possibly chaotic schedule that I may have, especially without a production manager, for example, and doing pretty much everything myself. Like my days can often be pretty chaotic, but it's a source of consistent control. And I feel like that reminds myself throughout my days that I do have control. And that can bleed into whenever my mind goes off track, okay, I do have control. And it's a constant reminder.
Yeah, that's good. And what does your night routine look like?
It starts with, first would be to actually record a voice memo to myself. I posted on a secret Instagram account.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I've always felt very uncomfortable sharing my voice just to the public. So I'm not going to say what it is, but it is out there. So I'll record a memo lesson
Does anyone
of the day.
follow it?
No one that I know.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh. Is it even under your name?
No.
Interesting.
I don't
So
think
what
you'll
is it?
find
Is it like an account with just a voice memo?
Yeah, I just record a lesson of the day, usually about 10, 20 seconds. It's recorded for myself. But it's getting to that discomfort of putting myself out there to whoever may watch it, whoever may stumble upon it. It's usually just random people probably going through reels that like it. But first step is that. Second would be to track my daily finances.
How do you do that? What does that look like?
Every time I buy something, I basically first a quick book, and then second, write in my notes.
And then at the end of the day, what does it look like to track it?
I just add up the total.
Gotcha.
Pretty
And are you
much.
putting it into like a master spreadsheet or?
Eventually, yeah. At the moment, I'm just keeping with the habit.
Okay.
I do plan on implementing more of a financial tracking system. But
What does that bring you? Why do you do that?
last season, for example, I was not tracking my finances at all. And I definitely feel that I overspent massively on some areas that I definitely didn't need to. And then
Personally or business?
Primarily business, but after the business, I realized now that I had a bit more of an influx of cash, it became personal as well. So I realized, okay, this is an issue. Let's address it. And I had an interesting conversation with Corey, who's the VP of Student Works in West. And I didn't really see why I needed to track event initially, but he was like, no, it just raises awareness. Like it lets you double check what you're spending on so you can make smarter decisions later on. And then once that clicked, it was like, oh, okay, this is a more optimal way of doing this.
That also just goes for all areas of life.
Yeah.
And the reason I bring that up is you know that because we've been talking about the 7-day time and energy audit. And but now I say this to a lot of the guys, right? Like, you know, some of the guys kind of have friction towards even tracking their meals in a lot of ways. And it's not so much about like, okay, how much calories are you eating or whatever. It's bringing awareness to specifically when you're going off protocol, right? In that case with meal tracking, but it goes with anything, right? Like tracking your mood day to day, tracking your screen times, tracking like all of this is bringing awareness to the thing. And that's back to Peter Drucker, right? You don't manage what you can't measure what you can't manage what you don't measure, right? And I think there's a lot of power in that. I like tracking's been one of those things that have just like it's been a mindfulness tool in a lot of ways. You know, so I totally agree with what Corey was saying. I think you as well have seen the other side of why you want to track.
Yeah. It's hard to see the benefits, but once you feel them, you don't want to stop.
I think it's hard. Well, actually, maybe I'll ask you that. Like, why do you think it was hard to see the benefits initially? Like, did you hear him say it brings awareness to it, and you still thought it was hard, or did you just not understand that was one of the reasons you would want to track?
I didn't even understand it brought awareness because I never even gave it the time of day.
Gotcha.
To begin with.
Gotcha.
And if he said that at the start, like, hey, this allows you to track and grow, probably would have done it right away. But funny enough, I just never made that connection in my brain. So some guidance from him was the ultimate factor, I'd say.
Yeah, I love that. So you do a voice memo which I totally want access to that Instagram.
You have to find it.
And then you track your finances.
Mm-hmm.
What's next?
After that, I start into my daily planning.
Okay.
So I've actually basically wrote out instructions for myself on how to plan my day.
I love that.
So I don't even need to think about what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, I just, whatever was missed from yesterday, pop that in a special spot, roughly plan out the day, and then I go into my instructions. So it's, okay, do I need to follow anything up? So I follow anything up for the following day. Then I'll add in like, oops. That's 5-minute heads up. Then I'll add in some reflection blocks, which are mandatory for my days.
Mm-hmm.
It could be mental imagery as well. And then I'll add in expectations for my activities, which I feel like is actually pretty key for myself. And then after that, I'll solidify the day and then add in my alarms after that's done. And then my electronics are off from that period. And then I'm on to a little bit of journaling, a little bit of reading, and then I'm lights out.
Is there anything specific you are doing in your journaling at that moment?
Yeah, it's where I use my internal scoreboard pretty much. So I'll list out my values, and then I'll 0 to 100% how much did I commit to those values for the day. I find in the busier days that really helps me stay grounded. Even if I feel like I'm doing things wrong, that lets me know for sure, like, how am I operating. So adds a lot of clarity to that at the end of the night, which is nice. And then I've got a few thought prompts, like, what is an energy draining filter I had throughout that day? What could I have gotten more out of? And then I'll write my final lesson for the day.
And then reading anything specific?
Currently is the power of now. And I'm honestly not reading much. I'll read about, honestly, 2 sentences a night.
Yeah.
But then every time I read one sentence, I want to reflect on it and see, how could this implement into my life? How could I learn from this? How could I visualize this? So it's about 5 minutes worth of time in front of the book, but only about 2 sentences read.
Yeah. Just wondering, I feel like that's a good nighttime book, and sometimes that could even spark some bigger thinking.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm open to, I don't think it's the perfect routine by any means. So that's a good point.
From what it sounds like, I think that's... Have you gone through the PM bookend?
Not completely, no.
Yeah, because it sounds pretty similar to what I do and what I recommend for most of the guys. I like that. Daily tracking. I love the little voice message on Instagram. No, that's solid. I think that the most important piece for anyone listening is planning tomorrow today, by far.
Yeah.
And then followed up by that, well, I guess there's a few things you're doing there, but I would say after that it's digital sunset, so putting your phone away. No tech. Giving yourself at least that 30-minute block before going to bed, ideally an hour. But phones away. And then the other piece is journaling. Like, I've had so many guys. Again, I'm not like shoving it down your guys' throat in Above Men, but I just think it prompts it in Above Men to start journaling. I think you were probably doing it prior to like Above Men.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But it's one of those things that I've seen many guys get turned on to journaling in a bigger sense while they were in Above Men, or we've had conversations about it. And it's just, I continue to have more conviction that the habit of journaling is, for a man especially that's in a high performance role, that is running their own business, it's such a fundamental aspect to staying like centered. Giving yourself space to reflect on what's up here and pulling it out, closing loops. No, I love that, dude. I think there's a lot of power in what you're doing, and you're bang on. So we'll wrap up with one question. What would, knowing what you've learned inside of Above Men, what would be one takeaway that anyone outside of Above Men you would love to be able to hand over to them as a valuable kind of insight for them to go and take action on?
I would say just try 4 days of a strict, maybe not even completely strict, but just of the 28-day diet. Just try 4 days of that. It's 4 days, like compared to your whole life, it's 4 days.
Yeah.
Just try it.
Yeah.
And feel it.
So for anyone that doesn't know, what is that?
It is a
what's the actual meals?
Yeah, so it's a ground beef and avocado bowl is first, so extremely simple. Next is a smoothie. Pretty basic smoothie with a bit of hydrolyte mix, protein powder, bananas, frozen blueberries, avocados, coconut milk, and aloe vera juice. And then the last is a steak or salmon and greens.
Bingo. So basically just like try that for 4 days is what you're saying.
Just try it.
Yep. Love that. Like you said, nutrition it's going to be the thing that you can see the impact the quickest and is arguably one of the most important components to everything else.
Yeah.
If you want to get your energy dialed in.
Yeah, just shut off your mind for 4 days in terms of nutrition.
Yep.
Don't think about anything.
Yep.
Just do that and then think about it after.
Bingo. Beautiful. And one final ask, you don't want to share your Instagram voice memo to the world?
Not yet, no.
Okay,
not
you can't find Sacha anywhere.
yet.
Normally it's, where do you find Sacha?
I do have Instagram, just...
Yeah. But no, this has been good. I think this has been super valuable. And again, appreciate you coming on and just sharing your thoughts, and honored to be the first podcast that you've been on.
First person to give me a haircut too.
And that let us know.
My head.
Yeah, let us know what you think. This is like raw cut. I think I did a pretty good job.
Absolutely.
But do you like it? I think Sacha looks amazing. You like it.
I love it, yeah.
And you're probably going to keep it for quite some time.
Definitely.
Which is crazy, yeah.
Yeah, it's monk mode.
100%. Monk mode, but it's like, I question this because like it's monk mode, and if you like it, it's like, well, is it monk mode? Because I don't know. Anyways, we'll wrap it up there. So thanks for tuning in. Subscribe, give us a rate, and we'll go from there. Peace.